Well, hello, and thank you all out there in the virtual world for joining us today. We've got a great panel. Obviously, the topic is vital to the success and health of the industry and to our individual successes. DTech is a lab that's part of the FIT's Innovation Center. And it's where we engage faculty and students solving industry problems with design and technology. And we've been working at the nexus of change across the entire fashion value chain for a little over 3 years, where we've executed 30 projects that have been done in partnership with industry that explore the impact of emerging technology on design, manufacturing, and retail. And we look to really leverage the fresh ideas and new perspectives of talented, smart students at FIT and leverage the college's combined strengths in design, science, technology, and business to have a positive impact on the world. The kinds of projects we've looked at, use AI and virtual prototyping and on-demand manufacturing to help the colleges and industries, strategic sustainability initiatives. And recently we've been exploring how virtual technology can broaden brand messaging and reach a point where we can communicate the emotional aspects of luxury retail. So with that kind of as a background, we have a great set of panelists here today, and sort of the way I thought we would move would be to start with a set of questions to the entire panel, and then go back and ask individuals some specific questions that are a little bit more related to their specific industries and expertise. So with that in mind, I guess my first question is, what does the new fashion economy look like? And is it reasonable to assume that consumer buying habits will fundamentally and sustainably change? It seems I have a mic. Excuse me for a second. It seems, there we go. I got a phone call accidentally. So let me go back over that. So what does the new fashion economy look like? Is it reasonable to assume that consumer habits can really change? And who should be the driver for that change? So I'll just sort of go down the list, and I'll start with Sydney.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. I'll give a quick introduction about Commonwealth Packaging Company, and then I'll answer your question just to give some context. So I'm Sydney Maisel-Straitman. I work with Commonwealth Packaging Company. We create and manufacture custom retail and e-commerce packaging, primarily for brand and sustainably conscious companies. The company was actually started by my grandparents 60 years ago. And today we work with thousands of retailers nationwide, ranging from small independent brick and mortar stores to startup fashion labels to international omni-channel retailers. So if you go into a Theory, Lacoste, Rebecca Taylor, Blue Mercury store, Chanel watches, you're very likely walking out the door with one of our packaging products. The iconic Rent the Runway reusable garment bag is a project that we've worked on for many years. And what we really focus on is understanding how packaging fits into our customers' overall marketing strategy. And it's our job to reflect what's important to the brand in their packaging program. We really focus on creativity, collaboration, and our job is to solve complex packaging challenges, which is something, back to your point, Michael, that we're facing right now. I think in the short term, we've certainly seen obviously a drive towards more digital e-commerce. We cannot, unfortunately, go into stores right now and have that one-on-one connection with a store, be able to feel the garment. So it's really up to the packaging to reflect what a brand stands for. And I think in the short term, as we still don't understand a ton about this virus, and until more information comes out, people may be wary about shopping in typically crowded stores. On the other hand, I'm hopeful that consumers will want to return to normal and will want to go into stores and shop and have that experience. But I think we have to be conscious as packaging partners to really drive our customers to be thoughtful about what their e-commerce packaging looks like right now, because that will be the primary source of revenue for retailers, and make sure that our customers' identity and what they stand for is reflected in their packaging program. And the last thing I'll say is that, the pause on this society has really shown an indisputable silver lining on the impact on the environment, and has forced us to reflect on excess spending and where retailers can cut right now. And we see ourselves as partners, as basically as an extension of the marketing team, right? So, we're thinking about, we want our brands to think about sustainable packaging. We want to think about how we can protect packaging, protect the products. And we see ourselves as a driver, and certainly a partner working with our customers to adapt to this new normal, at least for the meantime.
One of the things that I'd say, I was at CES this past year, and that's quite an experience by itself, I might say. But what I had seen a really kind of interesting development in packaging, where a company had developed shipping packaging that could be turned into a chair. So they were looking at it not as waste, but actually as a product that can have an additional function and additional life, and so I was wondering whether those, so you deal with packages that are obviously smaller and more human sized. I don't know whether anybody in your industry has even thought of looking at that extended life cycle.
Yeah, I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is certainly, the obvious reusable bag, right? But we're also seeing technologies emerge in how we can have compostable packaging, how we can create biodegradable plastics, where we have a ton of customers that are moving towards that. So, and obviously the reusability aspect. We worked with Anthropologie on the launch of their rental wardrobe subscription brand called Newly, and the bag functions like the Rent the Runway bag in that it's a reusable, shippable garment bag, but that bag also fits really nicely into a corrugated box, which can be reused. And it's about the messaging. Like, how can we talked with our customers? Mara Hoffman, who spoke yesterday, did this really well, where she uses a move towards biodegradable plastics. And on the outside of this poly bag, it says, Reformation. Mara Hoffman does biodegradable plastics, but Reformation, on the outside of their compostable bag, it says, "I am a vegetable," right? And then it can be decomposed at the end of life. So I think that, to your point, like reusability, no, we're not working yet with customers who are reusing their packaging to put into chairs, but a lot of our customers are really conscious of what technologies now exist for us to start to implement in their packaging programs that reflect what they stand for and are also really good for the environment. And that's something we need to be really conscious of in this new fashion economy. Not only what's important to the consumer, but how we can be kind to the environment as well.
And thank you very much. Excellent. Thoughts about the new fashion economy? Reasonable to assume that the consumer buying habits will fundamentally change?
Yeah, Michael. I mean, I probably would take a counter tendency to what maybe most people are thinking right now and saying, oh, it's just going to be a world of e-commerce. Obviously, I can't predict the future, but I think this lockdown has probably, a lot of people are going to want to go back to some type of normality, and normality as soon as possible will be human interaction. I think that's what's been people have been missing the most is just meeting people, going out and about. I think, I was kidding with somebody, but you go to your local little supermarket where you're allowed to go out once a day to buy clothes, and that's the only time you can actually dress up or try to. And suddenly people are dressing up to go to the local supermarket when you used to just go in your jogging pants and your hoodie and just didn't really care about going to buy a loaf of bread or whatever. Now that's become like the big attraction of the day. And so if you look,
see the cashier.
yeah, exactly. So well, I think what it's going to do, it's just going to accelerate what was already happening before. And what I mean by that, I think there was an obvious tendency that a lot more consumers are going to be buying online than on bricks and mortars, and I think that will accelerate. But it will accelerate also the bricks and mortar environment. I think gone are the days where stores just were packed with products on racks and consumers were coming in there, no emotion whatsoever. If that's the buying experience, you might as well stay home and buy it online. And I think it's going to be, bricks and mortars are going to have to accelerate what should have already been happening before this happened, which was really creating a consumer buying environment where people come in and it's more than just buying a product. It's the environment the store's offering, whether it's, some type of, interaction, things that are going on. I think technology is going to come into the store. I mean, will people want to go into changing rooms and try on clothes people had just tried on before? Are you going to have, mirrors that you can put the dress on in front of you and see what it can look like? I'm just going down the technology, which I'm not, I'm not an expert in that, but I can see that acceleration in bricks and mortars, but I don't really see that going away anytime soon. On the contrary, I think if the bricks and mortar environment is actually a really nice environment to hang out and enjoy your buying experience, those are the ones that are going to strive. I think the big department stores that just were full of racks where you couldn't even tell the difference between the products are probably going to fade away to e-com. That's going to accelerate.
They almost felt like warehouses that you were walking around. It was really not much of an experience.
Those days are gone.
Yeah. So Katarina, what are your thoughts on what this new fashion economy will look like?
Well, first of all, I absolutely agree with Eno and what he just said. People will still want to meet, just that I want to sit down with you and have a glass of wine. I want to touch the fabric. I want to have an experience still. It just needs to move into a new shape and form, more interesting. And as regards the new economy, I'm not from the industry. I'm a business lawyer. I work a lot with the investments and venture capital, primarily within the food tech and sustainable food. And my first thought when you said that was get all the stakeholders in the same room to really meet and talk cross-sectoral. Because if you look at the last decade within food tech and all of the positive things that have happened with the supply chain, the new alternatives to meat, to healthy lifestyle, transparency, it's so clear that once you get investors, business development, also excited about it, then you can really accelerate on all this fantastic innovation that is there and all of this know-how and all of this passion. So I'm so happy to be here today, just to kind of bring that perspective.
It's one of the great things that I've sort of seen in the industry is how collaboration has really become so important to everybody. We all recognize that we're all part of an ecosystem that's interconnected and that we can solve problems through creative collaboration. So that's really great. So I guess the next question I kind of have for you all, what has been the most significant technology innovation in your company's recent history? Well, in your case, Katarina, that's a little bit different because but have you seen it on, in outside of in the portfolio of companies that you work with? Where have you seen big technology impact?
Yeah, I have to go back again then to the food industry, where I feel that the venture capital has been so excited and they have felt that people really cared what they put into their body. And now it's time to really accelerate on them caring what they put on their body. And it's time now to really meet with the industry. So I feel that that's what's happening now. It hasn't happened really yet. And we need to really understand each other, because sometimes when we speak as a business lawyer or investor, you might sound like you're just a capitalist, just want to make money. And we use that language, but I guarantee you that all of the venture capital firms and business angels that I work with have such a passion. All of the investments they make are ethical. I really guarantee it. They're transparent, and they make impact, positive impact for us in the next generation. So I think that if we just start collaborating more, we'll get there quicker, because the knowledge, I think, is already there. The competence is there.
So you're saying even at the investor level, what you're seeing is, you know, significant change, not necessarily in technology, but a change in thinking about what makes a viable business.
Absolutely. I'm amazed and impressed the last years of what I hear. In closed rooms, everybody cares about impact, transparency, want to make something that they can be proud of for their children. So even though we might sound like super boring, we think that money is energy, and that there's resources, and then you can really bring out creativity, and you really have the muscles to make sure that everybody in the industry gets paid. Everybody from the starving designer to the ones on the floor in India. So that's kind of our way of looking at it. So we just need to start talking a bit more, I think.
Terrific. Anna, what's kind of shaking your world?
Yeah, I think I was talking to Katarina about that, and you know, unfortunately I would say, you know, working in the fashion industry, I can't say that we are probably in the forefront of the industry that's pushing innovation, and that's why I think this platform of fashion innovation is great, that it's actually forcing fashion innovation to come together, because you know, the fashion world, I look at it, and I've been around in this industry for a long time, and it just felt like it's been a slow mover. I mean, it still takes, from the moment you design a product in many brands today, from the moment you design the product that it actually hits the retail, the wholesale shelf. I mean, you know, I was saying to Katarina, they actually design and build cars faster than we still do in our industry. Right. And you kind of, you know, so I think one of the things I'm really pushing for in the company, and the company is really getting behind, it's really, you know, I can't say that I'm going to announce something so innovative that nobody's heard about it, but it's something that it's there, but nobody's really getting on board. And it's this whole 3D design element. I mean, we talk about 3D printing, and that's great, and I'm not going to, but I'm just talking even in terms of just a 3D design. It would cut off so much time, all the samples that we do, all the waste that goes behind that. And today you've got software platforms. There is so much you can do. There's so much technology out there in terms of 3D design that, you know, some brands have gotten on top of it. So I'm not saying no one's done it, but the amount of people that have actually, you know, jumped on this opportunity, when you look at our industry, it's a sin that not already 90% of us are working on that, like, you know, like it was a piece of pen and paper for a designer. I mean, it's, you know, it's got to be the new norm. I mean,
it's amazing how much of the value chain is impacted in it. It's not just design, it's also manufacturing, and becomes really an amazing asset in marketing and retail, which is only just now beginning to be explored even in the small.
And without talking about sustainability, all those samples that get, you know, punched with a hole at the customs because you can't resell the sample, that just get probably, you know, where do they go? You know, for you think about sustainability and ecologically, you know, I mean, how many samples out there are just, you know, who knows what go? That is, you know,
brands make samples of different products in all the different colorways. I mean, just, you know, in a virtual environment,
right?
You make it, you do as many colorways as you want, you get one top of production sample, and you're in really good shape.
Well, I'll give you another point, Michael. I mean, at one point is, you know, there's a lot of companies that are left with so much inventory today, you know, and you get all of these, well, you know, you get your TK Maxxes and your outlets and your off price and all of that, which is good for a consumer. You find cheaper products, but even from a sustainability, we produce so much more than we really need. And because we don't need it, you put it off at 70% discount. So people end up buying it, but they don't need it. They buy it because you tempted them with a 90% off tag or 70% off. I mean, if you did a 3D, designs and with a 3D technology today, you can put that on websites, and you got these companies that you get consumer feedback before you even go into production. And like you said, if you're going to do 5 colorways and the consumers all tell you there is no way anyone's going to buy the 5th colorway, you just don't go into production, and you don't do the minimum order that the factory is asking you for, and you reduce your inventory position. You have higher margins. So from a business point of view, that's a better deal. You don't have all of this inventory that goes to waste, and all the raw materials that you have to buy around it. So what Katarina was saying as well is, you've just suddenly now you've got a much more transparent business model, that you're not ending up selling, and then you end up killing brands because they have over inventoried their sales, and they ending up being an off-price brand versus what they used to be was an actual fashionable brand and a desirable brand. So I just think there's just so many, I'm just very surprised not many more people have jumped up.
3D has been a really essential part of the lab, and we've been sort of leading the charge inside of the college to help that ecosystem understand. Because yes, industry has to change, but everybody that's going into that industry has to come in with that mindset. Right. Sydney, is 3D play a big role in your industry, or are there other technology innovations that you see as being important to advancing some of these issues?
Yeah, we're seeing that much more in the material science space. I touched on some of the eco-friendly technologies that exist now, but a lot of our customers are moving more towards rPET, which is basically using recycled plastic, which the technology exists now to transform it into a fabric. So it functions the same way as a PP non-woven bag, which is made out of much less friendly materials. And it looks like, your tote bag that you get from a Lululemon or an Athleta or Bluemercury, which I mentioned before. So the technology is now existing and really across the globe too. We have a nimble manufacturing network where we can produce in China and Myanmar and India, and we're seeing that technology really kind of to grow across the globe right now. Something else that we're seeing, which is very prescient right now, we started working with and it kind of relates to packaging peripherally, but we always are on the lookout for other technologies that may be interesting to our customers, even if they're not our products. And we started working with a creative healthcare agency in New York called The Block, who invented something called the Safe Code Scanner, and just in the last couple of weeks with everything going on. And it's a simple barcode scanner that uses UVC light to kill pathogens and bacteria on packages within seconds. So, that's not something that's not our product, but we like to partner, as Katarina said, and collaborate with other companies that are, looking to do good in the world, however that might be. So that's something that has recently come to our attention. And, if anyone's interested in learning more about it, just send me a message on my LinkedIn or email me, and I can put you in touch with that agency to tell you more about it.
That's terrific. Now, because you can see that innovation and technology come from all different directions. So many components go into the development of product and the retailing of products. So it's really an open territory for new ideas. I think our session is going to, I think, is a shorter session, and I think we have some questions that are coming in on the chat. So let me share with the panelists the first question from Nudismo Radebi from South Africa, I think is where he said he was from. Or yeah, South Africa. Which part of the supply chain should startups worry about most, considering the virus and digital retail? So which parts of the supply chain do you feel are most vulnerable, I guess, individually?
That's a tough question to ask, because I guess, if you're looking at what's happening now with the virus, you're getting some countries that, China shut down, then they reopened, and now we've got Bangladesh shutting down, and, will they reopen? I think, what I would suggest is, the most important part of the supply chain coming out of this, one of the learnings is a bit like a fund, somebody investing on the stock market, right? Don't put all your money in one stock, just in case. You kind of want to invest in a fund. Unless you're a high risk scenario guy, invest in a fund that, will have shorter losses or wins. I would do the same. Can you get your supply chain? It's a very difficult part because, do you have, can you keep a bit of your production if you are in Europe, in Portugal or in Spain on your higher collection that you can ramp up? Or some in China, some in maybe in Africa, in some of those places. Can you mix it up? That's something I think companies should look at in the future and spread your risk in case there's another pandemic like this. And should the pandemic just hit one continent and not the other, you can easily move your manufacturing around. Easier said than done, trust me. But I think we'll have to think about that going into the future.
Kind of gives new meaning to diversity. You really have to think about how the entire world is engaged in this economy and really kind of look at diversifying manufacturing so that we're not at risk for a single place becoming quarantined or endangered in some fashion and putting the entire industry at risk.
And that includes raw materials. We will forget, we talk about manufacturing, but the raw material comes from somewhere else. So you might be able to manufacture in Europe, but if you can't get the raw material from China, it's as good as nothing.
So another question from Natalia Talis. Compostable packaging has PFSA and other chemicals. These items often are not accepted by recycling companies. Are there new, cleaner options? I suspect this is really directed to Sydney.
You don't say. So what's interesting about that is, for right now, the United States is really not set up for like curbside compostability options. Hopefully we'll get there. Right now, we're not there. So there are a number of other options that do exist, and the technology is really ramping up where it is a cleaner, cleaner components to make up the packaging. I think it really depends on what you're looking at and how compostable you need the item to be. So we can do interior linings that are compostable. There's tapes that is compostable now, and that really just speaks to we have decades of relationships with manufacturers across the world, where we partner with them to figure out exactly what a customer's needs are and what their consumer is looking for. So while we're working with an agency right now in Israel called TPA, who really specializes in this compostable material, and if TPA is not able to produce exactly what a customer is looking for, then we pivot our manufacturing elsewhere to customers that might have that technology. So there are other options, and that's a part of the conversation that we have to have with our consumers to see what their needs are right
now. Because composting is such an important aspect of recycling that people seem to forget. That I have a scientist colleague at FIT who pointed out that a head of lettuce takes 7 years to decompose in a landfill. All the time, the lettuce is giving off methane, which is far more polluting than carbon dioxide. So that issue of composting is so central to the success of a circular or sustainable manufacturing economy. And I'm not hearing a lot of people talking about innovations in that area that would make composting, the order of business on an industrial scale. So that's kind of, for me, been one of the puzzlers. I don't know whether, Sydney, you've seen anything along those lines or anyone else has, but to me, it seems like it's such an important part of the chain.
Yeah, and that's where I would say that we're seeing, because of that challenge, right, where it can take X amount of years to decompose, that's where we're starting to talk to customers about maybe compostable is like a very trendy word right now, right? Everyone's talking about composting, but what are the other technologies that exist that actually might decompose the material in 6 months in your own trash bag, right? So I think that everyone is sitting in this like compostability space, but there are other technologies that exist right now that are important to consider in a packaging program that would actually allow something to decompose in your own backyard. So I agree with you, right? And those, we're seeing those technologies ramp up, but I would encourage any retailer who has like the buzzword compostable in their mind to think about what other plastics might exist, biodegradable plastics that are actually made up of primarily vegetables like cornstarch and a bio plastic, to think about that option as well, which doesn't really have that longevity time span of 6 years to decompose in the landfill.
Yeah, so that brings up the response to another person's question, where, you know, how can packaging manufacturers transform sustainable manufacturing so that it's cost effective as non-sustainable? I'm sure that's one of the biggest challenges you faced, is that these new innovations, you know, are adding cost and complexity.
Yeah, so all these tough questions. So I think that right now we're seeing, we can manufacture everything in China, right? But we also have a nimble manufacturing network where we can also produce sustainable and eco-friendly packaging items in Myanmar and India to avoid duties and tariffs that we're all getting hit with right now. If someone wants to do a paper shopping bag that's made out of recycled material, we can produce those in Turkey and Vietnam, and where it makes sense, we can tap into our domestic resources as well if it's actually cheaper. But we really encourage, it is more expensive, but we encourage our customers to really look at packaging as an extension of their marketing team. And we also understand that because sustainable solutions are often much more expensive and customers will receive advantageous pricing if they order larger quantities, we really want to encourage, and in every conversation we are talking about sustainable solutions. And so we actually, it sounds sort of silly to bring up, but we really want to push our clients to do that. And we can help them out by offering warehousing on both of our coasts to our customers. So if they want to order larger quantities right now, we can kind of store that for them. And when they're ready to ship it out, they just give us a call. So I didn't mean to like plug our company there, but I think it's important to consider that, you know, sustainable packaging can be expensive, but there are different solutions to look into if it's a priority for a customer, or if it's a priority for a brand and a company. And that's what we're trying to do is talk to our customers about moving in that direction.
So one thing, I mean, Katarina, you know, your insights on this, understanding how value is perceived and how brands can message going forward that, yes, the product's more expensive, but the value is much greater in terms of its impact through the entire ecosystem. Do you see investors exploring interesting ways to promote that thinking?
Well, yeah, and I think also that you look at the whole value chain and the whole supply chain. So one thing from an investor is that we think that, gosh, you bind up so much capital. Like Ina said, when you have all of this warehouses, all this stockage. So if you could address that and control other aspects of the supply chain, then it should be okay to make it so profitable that you can also spend monies on the need to make it more sustainable, for the innovation, for the technology. If you look at the car industry, they have no problem with development, putting in resources into research and development, or into communication and educating the customer about it. So really you need to look at not only brand loyalty or a certain aspect about new packaging, which was super, super interesting to hear, but from an investor's perspective, you will look at the other aspects. Could we stop binding up so much capital then? And then make room to put more into sustainable solutions, for instance. So we kind of will look from a bigger angle.
And again, I think the idea that everything is an interconnected system of interdependent parts, that the more that we understand that, I think the more we give ourselves an opportunity to see how innovations in one area give you the freedom to actually offer economies in other areas. But you have to really have this holistic view rather than an individual, serving an individual need. So yeah, that's pretty, it's pretty interesting stuff. You know, I've got a couple of other questions that are, you know, let's see, how do you keep the cost? We've touched on a lot of the things that I thought were really important. You know, I guess one of the questions I asked earlier, you know, who should drive this change? How do we get the consumer motivated and informed so that they are not responding to impulses that have been cultivated through powerful marketing devices? How can those marketing tools be retargeted to help promote good messages?
Well, that's a really good question. I think there are several. I mean, we talked a lot about, or other people have talked about, transparency. Also about having some kind of baseline. What do we mean with sustainability? So we don't end up greenwashing. And also, as I know you, Michael, the work that you are doing, the work that your Donna is doing with this Fashinnovation, and also, for instance, the Swedish Fashion Council, when they canceled Fashion Week, and they're really, all of these stakeholders, including you put the finger on the issues, and you become relevant to the media, you become relevant to governance, to people like me. And I think that's such an important part in driving change, the work that you are doing, so that we have accountability. We don't only talk, then we can meet up again. What has happened? Follow-ups. And also, if we have a baseline, what is sustainability? Then the media can look 6 months later. What really did happen?
I like to present that question as how can we reprogram desire? Because we've been programmed to desire in a particular way, and that has driven our buying behavior. But we're in a position now where we have to reprogram it. It has to still work for industry, but at the same time, it has to work for the individual. The consumer has to think differently about the way they're satisfying those desires. Satisfying those desires are a human condition. So I'm not giving up that I like stuff. Any thoughts, Eno?
I thought, Katarina, great answer. I mean, that's, you know, I think at the end of the day, that's how it needs to be done. Look, you know, I think today with the amount of technology that's out there, I think, you know, from a brand point of view, the old model of believing that we're going to be able to tell the consumers what we want to tell them has dramatically changed. Obviously, I think, you know, the consumers now are telling us what they want us to be. So I think it's a very open and transparent. I like the word that Katarina used, transparent. A very open and transparent model between the brand and the consumer. But we also need to not forget that between a brand and a consumer, there's also a retailer in between. In many brands, and the retailer also needs to be on board with that. And I think today there's a missing link. Sometimes brands want to talk to a consumer a certain way, but there's a retailer in the middle that's just not, you know, not passing on that message or not letting it happen that way. So it needs to be an open dialogue and transparent across the whole chain.
Open and collaborative. I love those terms. So here's a fast question for everybody. What can we do to accelerate change in the industry? Start with Sydney.
I want to go last on this one. I want to hear from you.
I'm sure everybody does. I'm sure everybody does. Eno?
I would say, you know what, let's start with some of the governments being a lot more open and collaborative themselves.
Very good. Katarina?
Well, I need to give a shout out to Jordana and the Fashinnovation. I think this initiative, stuff like this is amazing.
Terrific. And now, Sydney, you're on.
Yeah, I want to go back to that point about being transparent. Like things like this, the programs like this, virtual panels like this we're talking transparently about the realities of our new world, right? And I think that continuing to have these discussions and collaborating with people from different industries that are all coming together, you know, under this umbrella of fashion, whatever that means to different people, is really important to continue to perpetuate, you know, even when we're out of this on the other side.
That's great. And it's wonderful that we as a community are really talking and thinking about how to change. What I've been on my mind, and you've probably heard it in many of my questions, is how do we get the public? Because we're really talking amongst the converted in a sense, but we're putting our heads to the, like, how to solve the problems systemically within our organizations and within our ecosystem. But we've got to find a way to change the way the consumer perceives value and perceives satisfaction. And that's, I think, that one of the biggest challenges we face in the end.
Yeah, I think the food industry, Katarina said it earlier, I mean, they've been doing it pretty well, and there's some pretty good documentaries out there. So maybe sometimes media and some content pieces and getting that out to consumers in terms of our industry and what our industry is doing could raise some type of sensitivity and put pressure across the industry as well.
You know, when I remember when Whole Foods and Wild Oats and a few of those retailers came online, people said, no one will ever spend the money for that. And now not only are they spending the money, but they're doing so much so that the prices are coming down. So it can happen.